Welcome, dear listener, to the sacred ocean of tranquil minds. Tonight, allow yourself to drift into a world of calm and serenity as we journey through timeless Zen legends. Let each story be a gentle wave, soothing your mind, restoring your spirit, and guiding you toward peaceful, restorative sleep. Take a deep breath, relax, and let the tranquil energy of these tales embrace you. Story 1: The Silent Bell. In an ancient temple nestled deep within the misty mountains where morning fog danced gently through towering pine trees and bamboo groves, there lived a young monk named Master Serenity. This sacred place had stood for centuries, its weathered stone walls bearing witness to countless generations of seekers who had come in search of inner peace and enlightenment. The temple possessed a magnificent bronze bell forged by master craftsmen over 300 years ago. This bell was not merely an instrument, but a sacred vessel of sound, its voice capable of carrying across the entire valley with crystalline clarity. Each morning at dawn, when the first golden rays of sunlight began to pierce through the emerald canopy above, Master Serenity would perform his most important duty, awakening the temple and all living beings within miles with the bell's divine resonance. For 3 years, Master Serenity had fulfilled this responsibility with unwavering dedication. Every morning before dawn, he would rise from his simple mat, spend time in silent meditation, then walk barefoot across the cool stone courtyard to ring the bell. His timing was perfect, his rhythm steady as the breath of the earth itself. The sound would ripple outward like waves on a tranquil ocean, stirring birds to song, flowers to bloom, and fellow monks to wakefulness. But on one particular autumn morning, when golden leaves danced on gentle breezes and the air carried the sweet fragrance of osmanthus blossoms, something extraordinary occurred. Master Serenity awoke as usual, completed his meditation, but when the moment came to ring the bell, he simply walked to its side and sat in perfect stillness, making no move to strike the bronze surface. Time flowed like honey as the sun slowly emerged from behind distant mountain peaks, painting the sky in soft hues of rose and amber. The other monks waited expectantly for their familiar morning call, but instead of the bell's resonant voice, they experienced something unprecedented. A silence so profound and complete that it seemed to contain the entire universe within its embrace. The abbot, an elderly master, with eyes like deep pools of wisdom and a beard white as fresh snow, emerged from the main hall with gentle curiosity. He found Master Serenity sitting in perfect meditation posture beside the silent bell, his face serene as a mountain lake at dawn. "Master Serenity?" the abbot inquired softly, his voice barely disturbing the sacred stillness. "Why do you not ring the bell as you have done faithfully for so many years?" Master Serenity slowly opened his eyes, which sparkled with the clarity of morning dew. A gentle smile graced his features as he replied, "Honored teacher, this morning I have discovered that silence rings louder than any bell ever could. In this perfect stillness, I can hear the voice of the cosmos itself, the breathing of mountains, the heartbeat of stars, the whispered secrets of wind through leaves. Why should we mask these celestial sounds with the striking of bronze?" The abbot stood motionless, absorbing these words like parched earth receiving rain. Around them, the silence revealed itself, not as an absence but as a presence, rich, full, and infinitely deep. They could hear the delicate sound of individual leaves falling, the distant murmur of a mountain stream, the soft rustle of a butterfly's wings, and beneath it, all the profound rhythm of their own heartbeats, synchronizing with the pulse of existence itself. Other monks gradually gathered in the courtyard, initially puzzled by the absence of their morning bell, but soon finding themselves drawn into the magnetic field of this extraordinary silence. Without words or instruction, they formed a natural circle around Master Serenity, and the silent bell, some standing, others sitting, all united in quiet contemplation. In this unexpected cathedral of silence, each monk began to discover treasures hidden within themselves. Brother Lotus heard perhaps for the first time the actual sound of his own breathing, deep, rhythmic, connecting him to all life. Sister Moonbeam felt the subtle warmth of sunlight as it touched her skin, each ray carrying messages of love from the universe. Elder Pine became aware of thoughts arising and dissolving in his mind like clouds, forming and dispersing in an endless sky. The abbot closed his eyes and allowed his consciousness to merge with the ocean of tranquility surrounding them. He remembered his early days as a student when his mind churned with questions, doubts, and restless seeking. For decades, he had pursued enlightenment through sacred texts, elaborate rituals, and countless hours of formal meditation. Yet, here in this moment of supreme simplicity, he felt closer to the truth than ever before, not as something to be grasped, but as something that was always present, waiting to be recognized in the space between thoughts. As the sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows across the temple grounds, the silence deepened rather than broke. Flowers seemed to bloom more vibrantly, birds sang more sweetly when they chose to, and the very air appeared to shimmer with an almost visible peace. The monks remained in their spontaneous gathering, each lost in their own direct experience of the sacred. This was not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of fullness, pregnant with infinite possibility, alive with the subtle music of existence itself. In this silence, minds that had been turbulent found calm, hearts that had been closed opened like lotus blossoms at dawn, and spirits that had been searching discovered they had been home all along. Story 2. The Bamboo Whisper. High in the mountains where clouds kissed ancient peaks and morning mist wove silver tapestries through sacred groves, there stood a monastery renowned throughout the land for its bamboo garden. This was no ordinary garden, but a living sanctuary where thousands of bamboo stalks grew in perfect harmony, their emerald canes reaching skyward like prayers made manifest in nature. Among the monks who tended this holy place was a young apprentice named Brother Clarity, whose mind churned like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. Despite months of diligent study and faithful practice, peace seemed to elude him like water slipping through cupped hands. His thoughts raced from worry to wonder, from doubt to desire, never settling long enough for true tranquility to take root. The master of this temple was known simply as Sage Windflow, an ancient teacher whose understanding ran as deep as mountain roots and whose presence brought immediate calm to troubled souls. Sage Windflow had spent 60 years in contemplation, much of it seated among the bamboos, learning their secret language of swaying grace and unshakable resilience. One particularly restless morning, when Brother Clarity's mind felt like a storm-tossed sea, he approached his teacher with hands pressed together in respectful greeting. The young monk's eyes reflected his inner turmoil as he spoke with barely contained desperation. "Honored Master." Brother Clarity began, his voice carrying the weight of countless sleepless nights. I have tried every meditation technique chanted, every sutra followed, every discipline you have taught. Yet my mind remains as chaotic as leaves in a hurricane. How do I find the peace that seems to come so naturally to you and the other senior monks? How do I calm this restless storm within? Sage Windflow listened with the patience of stone, his serene face betraying no judgment or concern. When the young monk finished speaking, the master simply rose from his meditation cushion and gestured toward the bamboo garden that stretched endlessly before them, a verdant ocean of gentle motion. Come, Sage. Windflow said softly, his voice carrying the quiet authority of wind through valleys. Let us visit our greatest teachers. They walked together along winding paths between towering bamboo groves, their footsteps muffled by years of fallen leaves that had composted into rich, dark earth. The garden was alive with subtle music, the whispered conversations of canes touching in the breeze, the delicate percussion of leaves dancing against one another, the soft sighs of wind finding passage through countless hollow chambers. Stopping beside a particularly majestic grove where the bamboo reached heights of 30 feet or more, Sage Windflow pointed to the graceful stalks swaying in perfect synchronization with the morning breeze. The movement was hypnotic, like a slow-motion dance performed by master choreographers who had rehearsed for centuries. Tell me, young brother, the master asked, settling onto a smooth stone beside the grove. What do you observe about these bamboo? Brother Clarity watched intently, his analytical mind immediately cataloguing what he saw. They are tall and strong, master. They grow straight toward heaven. They provide shelter and food for many creatures. He paused, searching for something profound to impress his teacher. Look more deeply, Sage Windflow encouraged gently. Do not think about what you see. Simply see. The young monk focused his attention more completely, letting his restless thoughts quiet just enough to truly observe. As he watched, a stronger gust of wind swept through the garden and something remarkable happened. The mighty bamboo, some thick as a man's arm and tall as temple pillars, bent gracefully before the wind's power. They swayed far to one side, their tops nearly touching the ground, yet not one of them broke or resisted. Ah, Brother Clarity whispered, beginning to understand. They bend but do not break. Yes, nodded Sage Windflow, but observe even more carefully. What happens after the wind passes? As if responding to the master's words, the wind calmed and the bamboo slowly, elegantly returned to their upright position. There was no struggle in their movement, no apparent effort or strain. They simply flowed back to center like water, finding its level completely unharmed and unchanged by the force that had bent them nearly horizontal moments before. They returned to stillness. Brother Clarity observed wonder creeping into his voice. Indeed, and what would happen if they resisted the wind? The young monk considered this. He thought of rigid trees he had seen broken by storms, their inflexibility becoming their destruction. They would snap. They would break and fall. Sage Windflow smiled with infinite compassion. Your thoughts, dear brother, are like this wind. Sometimes gentle breezes, sometimes powerful gusts, occasionally fierce storms. You have been trying to stand rigid against them, to resist their movement, to stop them from arising altogether. This is why you suffer. The master rose and placed a gentle hand on one of the bamboo canes. It swayed slightly at his touch, accepting the contact without resistance. The bamboo teaches us the secret of mental peace. See how it bends with whatever force encounters it. It does not judge the wind as good or bad, does not try to stop it or cling to it. It simply allows the wind to be wind while remaining fundamentally unchanged. Brother Clarity felt something shifting within his understanding, like clouds parting to reveal sunlight. So, I should let my thoughts move through me like wind through bamboo. Let them come. Sage Windflow affirmed, and let them go. When a thought of worry arises, bend with it, gently acknowledge its presence, but do not break yourself trying to fight it. When it passes, return naturally to your center, just as the bamboo returns to stillness. The thought cannot harm you any more than wind can truly harm these sacred canes. They sat together in the bamboo grove as the day progressed, watching the endless dance of sway and stillness, movement and peace. Brother Clarity began to practice this new understanding, feeling anxious thoughts arise, and instead of wrestling with them, allowing them to pass through his awareness like wind through the garden. A worry about his spiritual progress arose. He let it sway through him and pass away. A memory of past mistakes emerged. He bent with it gently and watched it dissolve. Doubt about his worthiness crept in. He swayed with its presence and felt it naturally subside. With each practice of this bamboo wisdom, Brother Clarity discovered something miraculous. The thoughts lost their power to disturb him. Like wind that cannot topple the flexible bamboo, his mental storms could no longer break his inner peace. As evening approached and golden light filtered through 10,000 bamboo leaves, creating a cathedral of living light and shadow, Brother Clarity felt a profound transformation settling into his bones. His mind had not stopped generating thoughts. Thoughts continued to arise as naturally as wind continued to blow. But now he danced with them rather than battled against them. "Master," he said softly, his voice now carrying a note of wonder rather than desperation, "I think I'm beginning to understand. Peace isn't the absence of mental movement, is it? It's learning to sway gracefully with whatever arises." Sage Windflow nodded approvingly. "Tonight, when you lay down to rest, let your mind be like this bamboo garden. Let thoughts arise and pass away like gentle breezes. Do not resist them or grasp them. Simply sway with their natural rhythm, and you will find the sleep of deep peace." That night, Brother Clarity returned to his simple quarters with a heart lighter than it had been in months. As he lay upon his meditation mat, thoughts indeed arose. Fragments of the day, worries about tomorrow, memories from the past. But now, instead of fighting them or being swept away by them, he practiced the bamboo teaching. Each thought was met with gentle acceptance, allowed to sway through his awareness, then naturally released as his mind returned to its center like bamboo, returning to stillness after wind. One by one, his mental storms calmed, his restless energy settled, and he drifted into the most peaceful sleep he had experienced since beginning his spiritual journey. The bamboo had taught him their greatest secret, that true strength lies not in rigidity, but in the flexible grace that allows us to dance with life's forces while remaining rooted in unshakable peace. Story 3. The Pebble and the Pond. In a hidden valley where time seemed to move as slowly as honey dripping from ancient trees, there existed a temple famous throughout the land for its mirror pond. This was no ordinary body of water, but a perfectly circular pool formed by centuries of mountain springs flowing into a natural depression surrounded by smooth granite stones. The pond's surface was so still and clear that it reflected not only the sky above, but seemed to mirror the very soul of anyone who gazed into its depths. Master Stillwater was the keeper of this sacred place, a revered teacher whose wisdom had drawn students from distant kingdoms. He was known for his unusual teaching methods, preferring to instruct through simple demonstrations rather than lengthy sermons or complex philosophical discussions. His understanding of the mind's nature was as deep as the pond itself, and his ability to illuminate profound truths through everyday moments had become legendary. On this particular spring morning, when cherry blossoms painted the landscape in delicate pink and white, a group of earnest students had gathered around Master Stillwater for their weekly teaching. These were not beginners, but advanced practitioners who had already spent years studying meditation philosophy and spiritual discipline. Yet, despite their knowledge and dedication, many still struggled with the persistent agitation of their minds. Among them was Sister Moonlight, whose brilliant intellect often became her greatest obstacle to peace. Brother Thunder, despite his gentle nature, found his mind frequently stormed by powerful emotions. Young Scholar Pine carried the weight of perfectionism that made every small mistake feel like a spiritual failure. Elder Crane, though respected for her years of practice, secretly battled doubt about whether she was making any real progress at all. Master Stillwater observed his students with compassionate eyes, sensing their shared frustration beneath their composed exteriors. He had seen this pattern countless times over his 50 years of teaching. Sincere seekers who understood the theory of mental peace but struggled to embody it in their daily experience. Without speaking, the master led the group to the edge of the mirror pond. The morning sun had just crested the surrounding peaks, casting golden light across the water's surface, which lay perfectly still like a sheet of the finest silk. Not even the slightest ripple disturbed its crystalline perfection. In this mirror-like surface, every detail of the sky was reflected with stunning clarity. Drifting clouds, soaring birds, even the delicate dance of falling cherry blossoms. The students arranged themselves in a semicircle around their teacher, their faces reflecting anticipation mixed with curiosity. Master Stillwater stood at the very edge of the pond, his weathered hands folded peacefully before him. For several long moments, he simply gazed into the water's depths, allowing the profound silence to settle over the gathering like a gentle blanket. Then, reaching into his simple robe, the master withdrew a small smooth pebble. Nothing remarkable, just an ordinary stone worn round by countless seasons of rain and wind. He held it up so all could see the morning light dancing across its modest surface. Each thought that arises in your mind, Master Stillwater said softly, his voice carrying easily in the still air, is like this pebble. Watch carefully. With fluid grace, he drew back his arm and cast the pebble into the center of the pond. The small stone struck the water with a gentle plop, immediately disappearing beneath the surface. But its impact created something beautiful. Perfect circles of ripples that spread outward from the point of contact, growing larger and larger as they moved toward the shore. The students watched mesmerized as ring after ring of ripples expanded across the pond's surface. Where moments before there had been perfect stillness and crystal clear reflections, now there was constant motion, the images of sky and clouds, fragmented and distorted by the continuous waves. See how one small thought disrupts the entire surface of consciousness. Master Stillwater observed his tone, carrying no judgment, only gentle instruction. The pebble of thought has already sunk and disappeared, yet its effects continue to spread, disturbing our inner peace, making it impossible to see clearly. Brother Thunder leaned forward, studying the rippling water with intense concentration. But, Master, how do we prevent the pebbles from being thrown? How do we stop thoughts from arising in the first place? A knowing smile crossed Master Stillwater's features. That, my friend, is like trying to prevent the wind from blowing or the rain from falling. Thoughts rise naturally in the mind, just as ripples arise naturally when anything touches water. The question is not how to prevent them, but how to relate to them skillfully. Sister Moonlight's analytical mind immediately engaged. Then, should we try to smooth out the ripples somehow? Should we work to calm the disturbance once thoughts have arisen? Watch! Master Stillwater replied, simply gesturing toward the pond. The students turned their attention back to the water. At first, the ripples seemed chaotic and endless, each ring intersecting with others in complex patterns that created seemingly random disturbances across the entire surface. But as they continued to observe, something remarkable began to happen. Gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, the ripples began to diminish. The outermost rings reached the shore and dissolved against the smooth stones. Without any new disturbance, without any effort to calm them, the waves naturally grew smaller and smaller. The water's surface slowly began to clear, reflections becoming more distinct as the motion subsided. "Do you see?" Master Stillwater asked gently. "The pond itself does nothing to stop the ripples. It doesn't resist them or try to smooth them out. It simply allows them to be what they are. Temporary disturbances that arise spread and naturally fade away when left alone." Young Scholar Pine watched with growing wonder as the last of the ripples disappeared and the pond returned to perfect stillness. It calms itself," he whispered in amazement, "just as your mind will calm itself." The master confirmed, "When you stop throwing more pebbles into it, when you stop struggling against the natural arising and passing of thoughts. Each worry, each plan, each memory is simply a pebble tossed into the pond of consciousness. The thought itself is brief. Like the pebble, it appears and disappears quickly. But our reaction to it, our struggle with it, our attempt to push it away or hold on to it, this creates the ripples that disturb our peace." Elder Crane suddenly understood. "So, when a thought of doubt arises, if I don't fight it or feed it with more thoughts, it will naturally settle. Observe once more." Master Stillwater said, producing another pebble. This time he tossed it gently into the water, and again the ripples began their outward journey. Watch what happens if we add more pebbles while the water is still disturbed. Before the first set of ripples had fully subsided, he threw another pebble, then another. Now the pond's surface became increasingly chaotic, with multiple sets of ripples intersecting, creating complex patterns of disturbance that seemed to feed on each other. "This is what we do with our thoughts," he explained. "A worry arises, one small pebble. But then we worry about the worry. We analyze why we're worried. We judge ourselves for being worried. We worry about what others might think of our worry. Each of these mental movements is another pebble creating more ripples until our inner pond becomes so disturbed we can see nothing clearly. The students nodded in recognition, seeing their own mental patterns reflected in the chaotic water before them. But watch what happens even now, Master Stillwater continued. If we simply stop throwing pebbles and allow the water to be as it is. He stepped back from the pond's edge and folded his hands in stillness. Despite the multiple layers of ripples intersecting and creating seemingly endless disturbance, steadily, the water began to calm. It took longer than when there had been only one pebble's worth of ripples, but the natural settling process was just as inevitable. As the morning progressed and the sun climbed higher, casting shifting patterns of light through the surrounding trees, the students practiced this pond meditation. When a thought arose, whether of anticipation for lunch, worry about unfinished tasks, or doubt about their spiritual progress, they imagined it as a pebble dropping into still water. Instead of throwing more pebbles through mental commentary, they simply observed the ripples of the thought and waited patiently for their inner pond to return to clarity. Sister Moonlight discovered that her intellectual analysis of every experience was like throwing handful after handful of pebbles into her mental pond. When she caught herself beginning to analyze, she would gently stop and wait for the ripples to settle. Brother Thunder learned that his emotional reactions were often caused not by the original feeling, the first pebble, but by his judgments and resistance to that feeling, dozens of additional pebbles creating storms in his inner waters. Young Scholar Pine realized that his perfectionism came from constantly throwing pebbles of self-criticism whenever he noticed any disturbance in his mind, creating endless cycles of agitation. Elder Crane understood that her spiritual doubt was actually just one small pebble, but her worry about the doubt, her analysis of the doubt, and her judgment of herself for having doubt had created a whirlpool of unnecessary suffering. As the teaching session came to an end and the sun reached its zenith, Master Stillwater gathered his students for final words of guidance. "Tonight, when you prepare for sleep," he said, his voice carrying the same calm quality as the now perfectly still pond beside them, "let your mind be like this sacred water. When thoughts arise, and they will arise, for this is the mind's nature, simply acknowledge them as pebbles touching the surface. Don't throw additional pebbles through resistance or elaboration. Trust in your mind's natural ability to return to stillness, just as this pond returns to perfect reflection when left undisturbed." That evening, each student carried the pond teaching into their sleeping quarters. As they lay down to rest, they practiced allowing thoughts to arise and pass like ripples on water. When worries about the next day surfaced, they didn't struggle or add more mental commentary. When memories from the past emerged, they let them ripple through awareness and naturally fade. When dreams began to form at the edges of consciousness, they welcomed them as gentle waves, carrying them toward peaceful sleep. One by one, their mental ponds grew, still reflecting the infinite sky of consciousness with crystal clarity, until they drifted into dreams as serene as moonlight, dancing on perfectly calm water. Story 4. The Lantern's Glow. Deep in the heart of an ancient forest where towering cedars had stood sentinel for 1,000 years and moonlight rarely penetrated the thick canopy above, There wound a pilgrimage path known to seekers throughout the eastern lands. This was the Trail of Inner Light, a sacred route that led to the Temple of Illumination, nestled high on a mountain peak where enlightened masters had meditated for countless generations. The path was treacherous, especially in darkness, winding through dense undergrowth across rushing streams and around precipitous cliff edges. Many pilgrims had lost their way over the centuries, some wandering for days in the forest's labyrinthine depths before finding their route again. Yet tradition held that the journey must be made alone in contemplative silence, trusting in one's inner compass to guide the way forward. On a moonless autumn night, when storm clouds obscured even the faintest starlight and a cold wind carried the scent of approaching rain, a weary traveler named Seeking Heart found himself completely lost on this sacred path. He was a merchant by trade, but his material success had left him feeling empty and purposeless. Driven by a desperate longing for meaning, he had abandoned his comfortable life in the city to undertake this spiritual pilgrimage. For 3 days, Seeking Heart had walked steadily through the forest, following what he believed to be the correct trail. But as darkness fell on this third evening, he realized with growing panic that nothing around him looked familiar. The path had gradually faded until he could no longer distinguish it from the surrounding wilderness. Every tree looked identical in the blackness. Every sound seemed to echo ominously from unseen depths. Fear crept into his heart like ice water. He had brought limited provisions, expecting to reach the temple by now. His water was nearly gone, his food reduced to a handful of dried rice. Worse than physical discomfort was the crushing weight of despair that settled upon his shoulders. Perhaps this journey had been a mistake. Perhaps he was not meant for spiritual awakening. Perhaps he would die alone in this endless forest, his quest for meaning ending in meaningless suffering. As these dark thoughts circled through his mind like hungry vultures, Seeking Heart stumbled through the underbrush, branches catching at his robes and roots, threatening to trip him with every step. The forest seemed to mock his efforts, offering only deeper confusion with each direction he tried. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm him completely, a faint glow appeared in the distance through the trees. At first, he thought it might be his imagination, a hallucination born of exhaustion and fear. But as he stumbled toward it, the light grew stronger and more distinct, warm, golden, and somehow infinitely welcoming. Following this beacon of hope, Seeking Heart pushed through a final curtain of hanging vines and emerged into a small clearing where stood a simple wooden shelter. Before this humble dwelling sat an elderly monk, his serene face illuminated by the gentle glow of a paper lantern hanging from a bamboo pole beside him. The monk appeared to be in deep meditation, but as the traveler approached, he opened his eyes and smiled with boundless compassion. "Welcome, weary pilgrim," the monk said softly, his voice carrying the warmth of the lantern's light. "I am Brother Lamp Keeper, guardian of this way station. You appear to have lost your path." Seeking Heart fell to his knees, overwhelmed with gratitude and relief. "Honored Master, I have been wandering for hours in complete darkness. I fear I am hopelessly lost and will never find my way to the temple. The path has completely disappeared, and I cannot see even one step ahead of me." Brother Lamp Keeper nodded with understanding, his ancient eyes twinkling with kindness. "The forest at night can indeed be a place of great confusion for those who try to see too far ahead. Tell me, friend, when you began this journey, could you see the entire path from beginning to end? No, master, Seeking Heart replied, puzzled by the question. But in daylight I could at least see where the trail led for some distance ahead. I could plan my steps and choose the safest route. Now I cannot see anything at all. The old monk chuckled gently and reached for something beside his meditation cushion. It was a simple paper lantern similar to the one that hung nearby, but smaller, designed to be carried by hand. With practiced movements, he lit a candle within it and offered it to the confused traveler. This lantern, Brother Lampkeeper said, will not show you the entire path to the temple. It will not reveal every obstacle you might encounter or every turn you must make. It will not even show you what lies beyond the next bend in the trail. Seeking Heart accepted the lantern with trembling hands, feeling its gentle warmth against his palms. The light it cast was indeed limited, perhaps 10 or 12 feet in any direction, barely enough to illuminate the immediate ground around him. But master, he protested, this light is so small. How can such a tiny glow guide me through miles of dark forest? I need to see where I'm going. I need to know that I'm heading in the right direction. Brother Lampkeeper rose slowly and gestured toward the forest path that continued from the clearing. Walk with me a short distance, friend, and let us discover what this small light can truly accomplish. Together they stepped onto the trail, Seeking Heart holding the lantern before him. To his surprise, he found that the modest circle of light revealed everything he actually needed to see. The path immediately beneath his feet, any roots or stones that might cause him to stumble the clear direction of the trail for his next several steps. Now, take one step forward, Brother Lampkeeper instructed gently. As Seeking Heart moved forward, the circle of light moved with him, continuously revealing new ground while letting the area behind fade back into darkness. The path remained clearly visible within the lantern's glow, winding naturally through the forest. Another step, encouraged the monk. Again, the light preceded him, showing safe footing and clear direction. Step by step, they progressed along the trail, the lantern faithfully illuminating each new portion of the path as it came within range. "Do you see?" Brother Lampkeeper asked as they walked slowly through the forest. "The light does not show you the destination, but it shows you the way. It does not reveal every challenge you might face tomorrow, but it illuminates the ground where you must place your foot right now." Understanding began to dawn in Seeking Heart's mind like sunrise after a long night. "You mean I don't need to see the entire journey at once. Life itself," the monk explained, "is like walking this forest path with only a lantern for guidance. We cannot see our ultimate destination clearly. We cannot know what obstacles or opportunities await us next week or next year. We cannot even be certain that the path we're following will lead exactly where we think it should." They paused beside a small stream where the path curved around a moss-covered boulder. In the lantern light, Seeking Heart could see exactly how to step across on stable stones, but beyond that curve, the trail disappeared into mysterious darkness. "But this not knowing," Brother Lampkeeper continued, "is not a problem to be solved. It is the very nature of existence. The lantern teaches us to trust in the next step, rather than demanding to see the whole staircase. It teaches us to have faith in the light we carry within us, rather than waiting for external circumstances to become perfectly clear." As they turned back toward the way station, Seeking Heart reflected on this teaching. Throughout his life, he had always tried to plan far ahead, to control outcomes, to see exactly where he was going before taking any risks. This need for certainty had kept him trapped in unsatisfying situations, afraid to take steps toward change, because he couldn't guarantee where they would lead. "Master," he said quietly, "I think I've been waiting my whole life for someone to light up the entire path before I was willing to walk it. I wanted to see the destination clearly before beginning the journey." Brother Lampkeeper smiled approvingly. "And what has that waiting brought you?" "Paralysis," Seeking Heart admitted. "I stayed in situations that brought no joy because I was afraid to move towards something uncertain. I delayed seeking spiritual truth because I wanted guarantees about what I would find. I remained lost in darkness because I was afraid to trust the small light available to me." They had returned to the clearing now, where the warm glow of the larger lantern created a circle of peace in the vast wilderness. Brother Lampkeeper settled back onto his meditation cushion and gestured for Seeking Heart to sit nearby. "The temple you seek," the monk said gently, "is indeed at the end of this path. But you will not find it by seeing it from here. You will find it by trusting your lantern to guide you step by step, even when each step leads into apparent darkness." Seeking Heart held up his small lantern, watching the flame dance within its paper walls. "But what if I take a wrong turn? What if I make mistakes along the way? The lantern will show you when you've strayed from the path," Brother Lampkeeper assured him. "Its light will reveal when you're walking on solid ground and when you're heading toward danger. Trust its guidance, take each step with awareness and care, and you will find your way." As the night deepened around them, the two men sat in companionable silence, each lost in contemplation. Seeking Heart found his mind naturally settling into a state of peaceful acceptance. Instead of anxiously trying to mentally map out every possible scenario for the remainder of his journey, he simply rested in the present moment, grateful for the light in his hands and the wisdom being offered to him. "There is one more teaching the lantern offers," Brother Lampkeeper said eventually. "Hold it up and look carefully at the flame within." Seeking Heart raised the lantern and peered at the small candle burning steadily inside. The flame was remarkably stable, despite the night breezes, protected by the paper walls, yet casting its glow freely in all directions. "This light," the monk explained, "is like the wisdom and compassion that exists within your own heart. It may seem small and fragile, but it is sufficient to guide you through any darkness you might encounter. You do not need to borrow light from others or to wait for external conditions to become perfect. The illumination you need for your spiritual journey is already burning within you." As these words sank into his understanding, Seeking Heart felt a profound shift occurring in his consciousness. The fear and desperation that had driven him to panic in the dark forest began dissolving, replaced by a quiet confidence and trust. He didn't need to see the entire path to the temple. He only needed to honor the light within himself and take each step with faith and attention. "When you continue your journey tomorrow," Brother Lampkeeper concluded, "carry this lantern with you, but remember that its outer light is merely a reflection of the inner light that has always been your true guide. Whether you reach the temple in one day or many, whether your path leads through easy terrain or difficult passages, trust in the illumination that never fails those who walk with awareness and compassion." That night, Seeking Heart slept more peacefully than he had in years. Instead of lying awake worrying about tomorrow's challenges or trying to plan every detail of his continued journey, he simply rested in gratitude for the present moment. The warm shelter, the wise teacher, the gentle light of his lantern flickering nearby. When morning came, he set out once again, with renewed spirit, the lantern in his hand and its lesson illuminating his heart. Each step forward was taken with trust rather than fear, with curiosity rather than anxiety. He no longer needed to see the destination to walk confidently toward it, for he had learned that the journey itself, guided by inner light and taken one mindful step at a time, was the true path to awakening. The lantern's glow had taught him the secret that eludes so many seekers, that we find our way not by demanding certainty, but by trusting the light we carry within and having faith in the next step, even when it leads into mystery. Story 5. The Empty Teacup. In the bustling capital city, where merchants hawked their wares and scholars debated in crowded academies, there lived a renowned professor named Master Intellect. He was celebrated throughout the land for his vast knowledge, having memorized countless texts on philosophy, poetry, mathematics, and natural sciences. His library contained over 10,000 volumes, and his lectures drew students from distant provinces who came to benefit from his extraordinary erudition. Yet, despite his academic achievements and the respect of his peers, Master Intellect carried within his heart a persistent sense of incompleteness. He had read about enlightenment in dozens of ancient texts, could quote the words of sages from memory, and had engaged in countless intellectual discussions about the nature of consciousness and reality. But direct experience of the peace and wisdom described in these teachings remained frustratingly elusive. Word had reached the capital of a humble Zen master living in a simple mountain hermitage, a teacher known simply as Master Emptiness. Unlike the learned professors of the city, this master had no formal education, owned no books, and gave no public lectures. Yet, pilgrims who visited him returned transformed, speaking of profound insights gained not through complex philosophical discourse, but through the master's simple presence and unexpected teachings. Master Intellect's curiosity was deeply aroused. How could an unlettered hermit possibly possess wisdom that had escaped someone of his own intellectual caliber? Surely any genuine spiritual understanding must be based on extensive study and scholarly analysis. He decided to visit this mountain master, partly from genuine seeking, but also with the secret intention of demonstrating the superiority of educated wisdom over rustic simplicity. The journey to Master Emptiness's hermitage took 3 days of arduous mountain climbing. Master Intellect carried with him a leather satchel filled with his most treasured books, planning to quote appropriate passages and engage the hermit in sophisticated theological debate. He had prepared dozens of profound questions about the nature of consciousness, the relationship between mind and reality, and the precise mechanics of spiritual awakening. The hermitage, when he finally reached it, was almost shockingly simple. A small wooden hut surrounded by a humble garden where vegetables grew in neat rows. Master Emptiness himself appeared to be an ordinary elderly man dressed in patched robes and working quietly among his plants. There was nothing imposing about his appearance, nothing to suggest extraordinary wisdom or spiritual attainment. "Welcome, honored scholar," Master Emptiness said warmly, looking up from his gardening with a smile of genuine pleasure. "I have been expecting you. Please, come and rest after your long journey." Master Intellect was somewhat disappointed by this humble reception. He had expected, perhaps, some demonstration of supernatural insight, or at least acknowledgement of his scholarly reputation. Instead, the hermit treated him like any ordinary visitor, offering him a seat on a simple wooden bench and bustling about to prepare refreshments. Master Intellect began formally, "I have come seeking wisdom. I have studied the teachings of every great sage, memorized the essential texts of 7 philosophical schools, and spent decades contemplating the deepest questions of existence. Yet I must confess that the direct realization of truth continues to elude me. I hope you can provide some advanced teaching that will finally unlock the mysteries I have been pursuing." Master Emptiness nodded thoughtfully and disappeared into his hut, returning moments later with a tea service, a simple clay teapot, and 2 small ceramic cups. The hermit began the ritual of tea preparation with slow, deliberate movements, heating water over a small fire and measuring leaves with careful attention. "I would be honored to share what little understanding I possess," the master replied as he worked. "But first, let us enjoy some tea together. The mountain air can be quite refreshing, but it often leaves visitors feeling parched." Master Intellect fidgeted impatiently as the hermit continued his methodical tea preparation. This seemed like an unnecessary delay when there were profound spiritual matters to discuss. However, politeness required that he accept the offered hospitality before proceeding to more important business. When the tea was properly steeped, Master Emptiness lifted the pot and began pouring the fragrant liquid into Master Intellect's cup. The scholar watched absently, his mind already formulating the sophisticated questions he planned to ask once this social nicety was completed. But something strange began to happen. Master Emptiness continued pouring even after the cup was full. The tea overflowed the rim, spilling across the wooden tray beneath, running in little streams onto the ground. "Stop!" Master Intellect exclaimed, jumping to his feet. "The cup is full. Can't you see it's overflowing? No more tea can fit." Master Emptiness calmly set down the teapot and looked directly into the scholar's eyes with a gaze so penetrating yet compassionate that it seemed to see straight through to his soul. "Yes," the hermit said gently, "the cup is indeed full, just like your mind-honored scholar. It is so completely filled with knowledge, concepts, theories, and opinions that there is no space left for anything new to enter. How can I pour the tea of direct wisdom into a vessel that is already overflowing with accumulated learning?" Words struck Master Intellect like a thunderbolt of recognition. In an instant, he saw the truth of his condition with startling clarity. His mind was indeed like an overfilled teacup, crammed so tightly with information and intellectual frameworks that no genuine insight could penetrate. Every experience was immediately filtered through his existing knowledge. Every new teaching was instantly compared to what he already knew. Every moment of potential awakening was blocked by the very learning he thought would lead him to enlightenment. "But Master," he protested weakly, "surely knowledge is valuable. Surely study and understanding are necessary for spiritual development." Master Emptiness picked up the overflowing cup and walked to his small garden. There, he slowly poured out all the tea, letting it soak into the soil around a young tomato plant. Then, he carefully rinsed the cup with fresh water from a nearby stream, cleaning away every residue of the previous contents. Knowledge is indeed valuable. The hermit agreed, returning with the now empty cup, just as tea is valuable. But watch what happens now. He lifted the teapot again and began pouring fresh tea into the clean, empty cup. This time, the cup received the liquid perfectly, holding it without waste or overflow. The tea filled the vessel completely, and its aromatic warmth could be enjoyed exactly as intended. An empty cup, Master Emptiness observed, can receive whatever is poured into it. A full cup cannot receive anything at all. Your mind, dear scholar, has become like a cup that is perpetually overflowing with the tea of yesterday's learning. Before you can receive the fresh tea of immediate wisdom, you must first learn the art of emptying. Master Intellect felt something profound shifting in his understanding. For the first time in decades, he glimpsed the possibility that his greatest strength, his vast accumulation of knowledge, might actually be his greatest obstacle to genuine realization. How does one empty the mind? He asked, his voice now carrying genuine humility instead of intellectual pride. How does one let go of a lifetime of learning? Master Emptiness gestured toward the empty teacup. Do you see how this cup resists the emptying? Does it cling to the tea that was poured out? Does it complain about being washed clean? The scholar examined the simple ceramic vessel. No, master. The cup simply allows whatever happens to happen. It neither grasps nor rejects. Your mind can learn this same natural emptiness, the hermit explained. When a thought arises, whether it's a memory of something you've read, an analysis of your current experience, or a plan for future study, you can practice letting it flow through your awareness like tea being poured out of a cup. Don't struggle to empty your mind, but don't cling to its contents either. Simply allow thoughts to arise and pass away naturally, creating space for fresh understanding to emerge. They spent the afternoon sitting together in the mountain garden, practicing this teaching of mental emptiness. Master Intellect found it surprisingly difficult at first. Every moment of stillness was immediately filled by his mind with quotes from texts, memories of scholarly debates, or analyses of his current experience. But gradually following Master Emptiness's guidance, he began to notice the space between thoughts, the natural gaps in his mental commentary. When a child looks at a flower, the hermit observed as they watched bees moving among the garden blossoms, she sees simply flower, color, fragrance, beauty. She doesn't immediately categorize it by species, compare it to other flowers she's seen, or analyze its botanical structure. Her mind is naturally empty of preconceptions, so she can receive the flower's essence directly. Master Intellect nodded, remembering his own childhood experiences of wonder and direct perception before education had filled his mind with analytical frameworks. You're saying that wisdom comes not from adding more knowledge, but from returning to this natural emptiness. Wisdom, Master Emptiness replied, is your natural state when the mind is not cluttered with unnecessary accumulations. It's like the sky, vast, clear, and spacious. Clouds may pass through it, thoughts, memories, perceptions, but the sky itself remains unchanged and unlimited. Your true nature is this sky-like awareness, but you've been so fascinated by the clouds that you've forgotten the infinite space in which they appear. As evening approached and golden light slanted through the mountain pines, Master Intellect felt a profound transformation occurring within his consciousness. The mental pressure he had carried for years, the constant need to understand, analyze, and categorize every experience, began to relax. In its place arose a quality of open receptivity, a willingness to meet each moment with fresh perception rather than predetermined concepts. Tonight, Master Emptiness suggested, as they prepared for rest, practice sleeping like an empty cup. When thoughts arise about the day's teachings, about your scholarly work back in the city, or about plans for tomorrow, simply let them pour through your awareness without grasping or rejecting. Allow your mind to return again and again to the natural emptiness that is always available beneath the surface activity of thinking. Master Intellect spent the night in the simple guest quarters of the hermitage, his mind gradually learning this new way of being. Each time his habitual intellectual commentary began, he gently returned to the empty cup teaching. Instead of analyzing his spiritual progress or comparing this experience to descriptions he'd read in books, he simply rested in the spacious awareness that remained when thinking quieted. When worries arose about his academic responsibilities, he let them flow through his mind like tea being poured from a cup. When memories of past philosophical debates surfaced, he allowed them to pass without engagement. When plans for future study attempted to fill his consciousness, he gently returned to the present moment's natural emptiness. To his amazement, this practice didn't make his mind blank or stupid. Instead, it revealed a profound intelligence that wasn't dependent on accumulated information, a wisdom that arose spontaneously from the empty space of pure awareness itself. This intelligence was fresh, immediate, and perfectly appropriate to each moment, like clear water, taking the shape of whatever container holds it. As dawn broke over the mountain peaks, Master Intellect awoke feeling more refreshed and clear than he had in years. The constant mental chatter that usually greeted him each morning was replaced by a peaceful spaciousness, an open receptivity to whatever the new day might bring. "Master," he said to the hermit as they shared a simple breakfast of rice and vegetables, "I think I'm beginning to understand. All these years I thought I needed to fill my mind with more and more knowledge to find wisdom. But wisdom was already present in the space between thoughts, in the awareness that observes all mental activity." Master Emptiness smiled warmly. The empty cup is always ready to receive fresh tea. The empty mind is always ready to receive fresh wisdom. As you return to your scholarly life in the city, remember that your greatest teaching tool is not what you know, but your willingness to remain empty, open, and receptive to each moment's unique truth. Master Intellect returned to the capital, carrying nothing but this teaching of emptiness, yet feeling infinitely richer than when he had arrived with his satchel full of books. He continued his scholarly work, but now approached it with the mind of an empty cup, open, receptive, and always ready to be filled with fresh understanding rather than defending old positions. His students noticed the change immediately. His teachings became simpler, yet more profound, his presence more peaceful, yet more dynamic. Most importantly, he had learned the secret that transformed his entire relationship with knowledge that true wisdom flows most freely through the empty spaces of a quiet mind, like perfect tea, filling a clean, receptive cup. Story 6. The Mountain Echo. High in the Himalayas, where ancient peaks touched the realm of gods, and the air was so pure it seemed to crystallize thoughts into visible forms, there stood a monastery known as the Temple of Reverberating Wisdom. This sacred place was carved directly into the living rock of Mount Serenity, its chambers and courtyards shaped by generations of devoted monks who had spent their lives in pursuit of perfect understanding. The temple was famous throughout the spiritual world, not only for its breathtaking location, but for a unique natural phenomenon that occurred within its walls. The mountain's peculiar geological formation created extraordinary acoustic properties. Every sound made within the temple grounds would echo back with perfect clarity, sometimes repeating dozens of times before finally fading into the eternal silence of the peaks. Among the young novices studying at this remarkable place was a monk named Brother Turmoil, whose very name reflected the constant agitation of his inner state. Despite months of dedicated practice, meditation instruction, and philosophical study, Brother Turmoil found himself perpetually disturbed by waves of anger, fear, frustration, and doubt that seemed to arise from nowhere and persist for hours or even days. The other novices appeared to progress steadily in their spiritual development, finding increasing peace and equanimity through their practices. But Brother Turmoil felt trapped in cycles of emotional reactivity that made him question whether he was truly suited for monastic life. Every small setback triggered disproportionate anger. Every uncertainty spawned cascading fears about his spiritual future. Every perceived slight from fellow monks created lasting resentment that poisoned his meditation and disturbed his sleep. The abbot of the temple was Master Echo, an enlightened teacher whose understanding of the mind's nature had been refined through 40 years of mountain contemplation. Master Echo was known for his unusual teaching methods, often using the temple's unique acoustic properties to illustrate profound spiritual principles that conventional instruction could not convey. On a particularly difficult morning, when Brother Turmoil had spent the entire night wrestling with anxiety about an upcoming examination of his Buddhist studies, he found himself standing alone in the temple's main courtyard, his emotions churning like storm clouds gathering over the peaks. The pressure of unexpressed frustration had built to an unbearable level. Unable to contain his distress any longer, Brother Turmoil threw back his head and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Why am I so miserable? Why can't I find peace like the other monks? Why does every day bring new suffering? I hate this confusion. I hate these emotions. I hate feeling so lost and helpless." His words rang out across the courtyard with shocking intensity, seeming to shatter the morning stillness like stones thrown through glass. But then, something extraordinary happened that stopped Brother Turmoil in his tracks. The mountain began to answer him. "Why am I so miserable?" Came the first echo rolling back from the surrounding peaks with startling clarity. "Why can't I find peace?" Followed the second echo, slightly softer, but still unmistakably his own voice returning to him. "Why does every day bring new suffering?" replied the third echo, now beginning to blend with the natural acoustics of the stone chambers. "I hate this confusion. I hate these emotions. I hate feeling so lost." Continued the mountain, throwing his own words back at him with relentless precision. Brother Turmoil stood frozen, listening in amazement as his outburst reverberated through the temple complex. Each echo carried exactly the same emotional charge he had put into the original shout. The same anger, the same desperation, the same bitter self-judgment. The mountain was perfectly reflecting his inner state, giving him back precisely what he had sent out. As the echoes gradually faded into silence, Brother Turmoil became aware that Master Echo had appeared beside him, having emerged from the meditation hall where he had been conducting morning prayers. The elderly teacher's face showed no surprise or concern at the novice's emotional outburst, only an expression of infinite compassion mixed with subtle amusement. "Did you hear how the mountain answered you, my son?" Master Echo asked gently, his voice carrying the same calm quality that seemed to characterize everything about his presence. Brother Turmoil flushed with embarrassment. "Master, I apologize for my outburst. I know it was inappropriate to disturb the temple's peace with my emotional weakness. The mountain was simply echoing my words back to me." Master Echo smiled and gestured toward the towering peaks that surrounded them on all sides. "Simply echoing, look more carefully at what just occurred. The mountain received exactly what you offered it: anger, complaint, hatred, and despair. And what did it give back to you?" The young monk considered this question. "The same anger, complaint, hatred, and despair that I sent to it. Precisely. The mountain is perfectly honest. It returns to you exactly what you give to it, without addition or subtraction, without judgment or modification. It is like a perfect mirror of sound, reflecting your inner state back to you with absolute fidelity." Master Echo began walking slowly around the courtyard, his footsteps creating soft echoes that seemed to dance gently among the stone walls. Brother Turmoil followed, beginning to sense that this was more than a simple lesson about acoustics. "Now tell me," the master continued, "in your daily interactions with other people, with circumstances, even with your own thoughts and emotions, what do you typically send out into the world?" Brother Turmoil considered this carefully. As he reflected honestly on his recent behavior, he realized with growing discomfort that he had been projecting the same qualities he had just shouted at the mountain. When fellow monks offered gentle suggestions, he responded with defensive anger. When teachers presented challenging concepts, he reacted with frustrated resistance. When difficulties arose in his practice, he met them with bitter complaints about the unfairness of spiritual life. "I think," he said slowly, "I think I've been sending out mostly negativity. Anger when things don't go my way. Fear when I feel uncertain. Criticism when others don't meet my expectations. Complaints when life doesn't match my preferences." "And what has the world sent back to you in return?" The recognition hit Brother Turmoil like a mountain avalanche. "More anger from others when I'm angry with them. More uncertainty when I approach situations with fear. More criticism when I'm judgmental. More problems when I constantly complain about my circumstances." Master Echo nodded approvingly. "The world, like this mountain, is constantly echoing back to us what we send out, not because it is punishing or rewarding us, but because this is simply how the fabric of existence operates. Consciousness creates reality through the quality of energy we project into each moment." They had reached a small alcove carved into the mountain wall, where a statue of the Buddha sat in perfect meditation posture, his stone face radiating timeless serenity. Master Echo settled onto a meditation cushion beside the statue and invited Brother Turmoil to sit facing him. "Let us conduct an experiment," the master suggested. "This time, instead of shouting your troubles at the mountain, try sending it something different. What would you like to receive back from the world around you?" Brother Turmoil thought about this question deeply. What did he truly long for in his spiritual life? What qualities would transform his daily experience from struggle into joy? "Peace," he said finally. "I would like to feel peaceful and calm regardless of external circumstances." Then, Send peace to the mountain, Master Echo encouraged. Not as words, but as a genuine feeling arising from your heart. The young monk closed his eyes and tried to access whatever peace existed within his being. At first, it was difficult to find anything but his familiar agitation. But gradually, he remembered moments of tranquility he had experienced. The quiet joy of watching sunrise over the peaks, the deep satisfaction of completing a day of mindful work, the gentle happiness that arose when helping fellow novices with their studies. Drawing on these memories, Brother Turmoil gradually cultivated a feeling of genuine peace within his heart. When the sensation felt stable and real, he opened his eyes and, in a voice filled with calm sincerity, called out to the mountain, "May all beings be peaceful. May all hearts find rest. May this temple be filled with tranquility." The mountain received his offering and began its response. "May all beings be peaceful." Came the first echo carrying the same gentle energy he had sent. "May all hearts find rest." Followed the second, seeming to bless the very air around them. "May this temple be filled with tranquility." Concluded the mountain, the words seeming to settle into the stone walls themselves like an ancient blessing. Brother Turmoil felt a profound shift occurring within his consciousness as he listened to these peaceful echoes reverberating through the temple complex. Unlike his earlier angry shouts, these words seemed to grow more beautiful with each repetition, creating layers of harmony that transformed the entire atmosphere of the courtyard. "Do you feel the difference?" Master Echo asked softly. "Yes," Brother Turmoil whispered, amazed by the change in both the acoustic environment and his own inner state. "When I sent out peace, peace came back to me. But more than that, the echoes seemed to create even more peace than I originally felt. This is because genuine positive energy naturally multiplies when shared," the Master explained. "Unlike anger or fear, which diminish both the giver and receiver peace and love, actually grow stronger when we offer them freely to the world." They spent the remainder of the morning experimenting with this principle. Brother Turmoil practiced sending different qualities to the mountain: gratitude, compassion, joy, loving kindness, and observing what returned to him. In every case, the echo brought back exactly what he had offered, but somehow amplified and enriched by its journey through the sacred acoustic space. "Master," Brother Turmoil said as the noon bell began to ring, "I think I'm beginning to understand something important about my emotional difficulties. I've been creating many of my own problems by the quality of energy I send out into each situation." Master Echo smiled with the satisfaction of a teacher whose student had grasped an essential truth. The world is always echoing back to us the quality of our own consciousness. When we approach life with anger, we create conditions that justify more anger. When we meet challenges with fear, we generate circumstances that seem increasingly threatening. But when we learn to send out peace, love, and wisdom, the world begins to reflect these same qualities back to us. That afternoon, Brother Turmoil began applying this teaching to his interactions with fellow monks, his approach to study, and his attitude toward the inevitable challenges of monastic life. When a senior monk corrected his meditation posture instead of responding with defensive irritation, he sent out gratitude for the guidance. The senior monk's demeanor immediately softened, and he spent extra time helping Brother Turmoil refine his technique. When he encountered a difficult passage in his philosophical studies, instead of reacting with frustrated complaints about the teacher's unclear explanations, he approached the material with curiosity and respect. Suddenly, the concepts that had seemed impossibly complex began revealing their inner logic. When evening came and it was time for sleep, Brother Turmoil lay on his simple mat with a heart full of wonder at the day's discoveries. For the first time in months, his mind felt genuinely peaceful. Not because external circumstances had improved, but because he had learned to create peace from within and share it with the world around him. Tonight, he whispered to himself, practicing the mountain's teaching, "May my dreams be peaceful. May my rest be deep. May I awaken with a heart ready to send love into each new moment." And as if responding to his gentle intention, the mountain seemed to whisper back through the night wind, "May your dreams be peaceful. May your rest be deep. May you awaken with love." Brother Turmoil drifted into the most restorative sleep he had experienced since arriving at the temple, his consciousness cradled by the eternal echoes of his own positive intentions reverberating through the sacred peaks. He had learned the secret that would transform not only his spiritual practice, but his entire relationship with existence, that we receive from the world exactly what we choose to send out, and that the quality of our inner life determines the nature of our outer experience. The mountain had taught him that consciousness creates reality through the eternal echo of our own heart's intentions, reflected back to us with the perfect honesty of natural law. Story 7. The Floating Leaf. In a hidden valley where time seemed to flow as gently as honey from ancient trees, there meandered a crystal-clear stream known to local villagers as the River of Letting Go. This waterway had its source high in the sacred mountains where snow-fed springs bubbled up from depths that touched the very heart of the earth. As it wound through the valley, the stream passed by numerous temples and meditation retreats, its constant murmur serving as a natural soundtrack for countless hours of spiritual practice. The river was particularly beloved by contemplatives because of its unique characteristics. Unlike rushing mountain torrents or sluggish lowland waterways, this stream flowed with perfect consistency. Neither too fast nor too slow, neither too shallow nor too deep. Its clear waters revealed every pebble on the bottom, every fish swimming in its depths, every leaf that happened to fall from the overhanging trees. On the banks of this remarkable stream stood the monastery of Flowing Wisdom, home to a community of monks and nuns dedicated to understanding the deepest teachings of impermanence and non-attachment. The monastery's gardens extended right to the water's edge, where ancient willow trees dipped their graceful branches into the current, and lotus flowers bloomed in quiet backwaters. Among the monastery's residents was a young nun named Sister Grasping, whose very name reflected her greatest spiritual challenge. Despite years of sincere practice and genuine devotion to the Buddha's teachings, Sister Grasping found herself unable to let go of the endless stream of thoughts that flowed through her mind each day. Every meditation session became a struggle against the current of mental activity. Every attempt at mindfulness was undermined by her desperate efforts to control and direct her inner experience. The harder she tried to achieve the peaceful emptiness described in the sacred texts, the more turbulent her mental state became. She would sit in meditation, determined to maintain perfect concentration, only to find herself frustrated by the constant arising of thoughts, memories, plans, and worries. Each unwanted mental visitor was met with fierce resistance, creating an inner battlefield where peace became impossible. Her teacher at the monastery was Master Streamflow, an elderly sage whose understanding of the mind's nature had been refined through decades of patient observation and gentle practice. Master Streamflow was known throughout the valley for his profound simplicity and his ability to illuminate the most complex spiritual principles through direct experience rather than elaborate philosophical explanation. On a particularly beautiful autumn morning, when the trees were dressed in robes of gold and crimson, and the air carried the sweet scent of wood smoke from distant villages, Sister Grasping approached her teacher with a heart heavy with frustration and self-doubt. Revered Master, she began her words carrying the weight of months of struggle. I fear I am the worst meditation student in the entire monastery. No matter how hard I try to empty my mind, thoughts continue arising like an endless army of invaders. I fight against them. I try to push them away. I attempt to replace them with mantras or visualizations, but nothing works. The other practitioners seem to find such natural peace in their sitting practice, while I can barely manage a few moments of clarity before the mental chaos returns. Master Streamflow listened with the infinite patience of one who had heard similar complaints from hundreds of students over the years. His weathered face showed no concern or judgment, only the gentle compassion of someone who understood exactly the nature of the struggle being described. Come, he said simply, rising from his meditation cushion and walking toward the monastery's garden gate. Let us visit our wisest teacher. Sister Grasping followed her master through the carefully tended gardens past beds of herbs and vegetables, beyond the peaceful meditation groves until they reached the banks of the river of letting go. The morning sun slanted through the willow branches, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced on the water's surface. The stream's gentle music seemed to invite them into a deeper state of awareness simply through its constant rhythmic presence. Master Streamflow settled onto a smooth boulder beside the water and gestured for Sister Grasping to sit on a fallen log nearby. For several minutes they simply watched the river flow past, observing its natural movement and the way it carried everything that fell into it. Twigs, flower petals, insects, and occasionally larger debris from upstream. As they sat in comfortable silence, a single leaf detached itself from an overhanging maple tree and began its gentle descent toward the water. The leaf was perfect in its autumn colors, deep red edges fading to golden yellow in the center, with intricate veins visible against the morning light. It landed on the stream's surface with the softest whisper and immediately began its journey downstream. Watch carefully, Master Streamflow instructed, pointing to the floating leaf. Observe how it travels with the current. Sister Grasping focused her attention on the small leaf as it was carried along by the stream's gentle flow. At first, there seemed nothing particularly remarkable about what she was witnessing. Simply a leaf floating downstream as countless leaves had done before it. But as she continued watching, her teacher's intention began to reveal itself. The leaf didn't struggle against the current. It didn't try to swim upstream or direct its own path. It didn't resist when small eddies spun it in circles or object when faster currents moved it more quickly. Sometimes it would catch briefly on a protruding stone or tangle momentarily in riverside vegetation, but it never fought these temporary obstacles. Instead, It simply rested wherever it found itself until the water's natural movement freed it to continue its journey. "Tell me," Master Streamflow asked softly, "what effort is the leaf making to travel downstream?" Sister, grasping, considered this question carefully. "No effort at all, Master. It's simply allowing the current to carry it wherever the water flows. And does the leaf appear distressed by its journey? Does it seem to suffer from being moved by forces beyond its control?" "No," she replied, beginning to sense deeper implications in these observations. "It looks peaceful, content. It seems to be perfectly at ease with whatever happens to it." Master Streamflow nodded approvingly. "And what would happen if the leaf tried to fight against the current, if it struggled to stay in one place or attempted to swim upstream?" Sister, grasping, imagined this scenario. It would be torn apart by the effort. The struggle would destroy it. Now, the Master continued, his voice taking on the quality of gentle instruction. "Tell me about your thoughts during meditation. How do they move through your mind?" As Sister, grasping, reflected on her meditation experiences, a sudden insight began to dawn. They flow through my awareness like objects floating downstream. Memories arise and pass away. Plans for the future appear and dissolve. Worries surface and sink again. They're constantly moving, constantly changing. And what happens when you try to stop them or push them away? The parallel became crystal clear. I create struggle. I create suffering. Instead of letting them flow naturally through my mind like this leaf floating downstream, I try to dam the river of consciousness. But the thoughts keep coming anyway, and my resistance only creates turbulence. Master Streamflow smiled with the satisfaction of a teacher whose student had grasped an essential truth. Your mind is like this stream, dear sister. Thoughts arise naturally and constantly, just as leaves fall naturally into flowing water. The problem is not the presence of thoughts. This is the mind's natural activity, as normal as the river's flow. The problem is your relationship to these thoughts, your attempt to control what should be allowed to simply pass through. They continued watching the leaf as it made its way downstream, sometimes moving quickly through clear channels, sometimes slowing in quiet pools, occasionally catching on obstacles before the current gently freed it to continue. Throughout its entire journey, the leaf maintained a quality of perfect acceptance, surrendering completely to the water's wisdom while remaining essentially unchanged by its experiences. "But Master," Sister, grasping, asked, "how do I practice this letting go? How do I stop fighting against my thoughts when the habit of resistance feels so automatic?" "Watch the leaf more carefully," Master Streamflow suggested. "See how it responds when it encounters that branch hanging in the water." As they observed, the floating leaf approached a willow branch that dipped into the stream. Instead of avoiding the obstacle or struggling against it, the leaf simply bumped gently against the branch and remained there, caught but not distressed, waiting patiently in the small eddy created by the obstruction. The leaf doesn't panic about being temporarily stopped, the Master pointed out. It doesn't judge the branch as wrong or try to force its way past. It simply rests where it is, trusting that the current will eventually free it when the time is right. A few moments later, a slight shift in the water's flow nudged the leaf around the branch, and it continued its downstream journey without any effort on its own part. This is how you can work with persistent thoughts or strong emotions during meditation, Master Streamflow explained. When a worry arises and seems to stick in your awareness, don't struggle against it. Simply let it rest there, like the leaf caught on the branch. Acknowledge its presence without resistance or judgment. Trust that your mind's natural flow will eventually carry it away when you stop trying to force the process. Sister Grasping felt a profound shift occurring in her understanding. So, instead of seeing thoughts as enemies to be defeated, I can treat them like leaves floating through the stream of consciousness. Exactly. Some thoughts will pass quickly through your awareness, barely noticed. Others may linger for a while, caught on the branches of old memories or future concerns. But all of them are simply temporary visitors in the flowing stream of your mind. Your job is not to control the stream or manage its contents, but to be like the stream itself. Spacious, accepting, allowing everything to flow naturally without grasping or pushing away. They spent the remainder of the morning sitting by the river, practicing this new understanding. Master Streamflow guided Sister Grasping in a meditation where she imagined her thoughts as leaves falling into the stream of her awareness. Each time a mental visitor arose, whether a memory, plan, worry, or any other form of mental activity, she practiced the leaf teaching. When a thought of anxiety about her spiritual progress arose, instead of fighting it or feeding it with additional worry, she visualized it as a dark leaf floating downstream. She watched it with gentle curiosity, but made no effort to push it away or hold on to it. Gradually, the anxious thought naturally dissolved, carried away by the flow of awareness itself. When a memory of past mistakes surfaced, bringing with it familiar feelings of regret and self-judgment, she applied the same approach. The memory became another leaf in the stream, acknowledged, accepted, allowed to float through her consciousness without resistance. Soon it too passed away naturally, leaving no trace behind. When plans for future study sessions began filling her mind with anticipatory excitement, she met these thoughts with the same spacious acceptance. Like quickly moving leaves carried by a swift current, the planning thoughts flowed through her awareness and disappeared downstream, leaving her present moment consciousness clear and peaceful. The secret Master Streamflow observed as they practiced together is learning to be the stream rather than trying to control what flows through it. The stream doesn't choose which leaves will fall into it, doesn't judge some objects as good and others as bad, doesn't try to hold on to beautiful flowers or push away dead branches. It simply flows with natural wisdom, carrying everything with equal grace. As the day progressed, Sister Grasping discovered something remarkable happening in her meditation practice. Instead of the familiar battle against mental activity, she began experiencing her thoughts as part of a natural process that required no management from her. Like a clear stream that remains essentially unchanged, whether it carries flower petals or fallen twigs, her awareness maintained its basic spaciousness, regardless of what thoughts happened to be flowing through it. "Master," she said, as the afternoon light began to golden, "I think I'm beginning to understand why this approach feels so different. When I try to control my thoughts, I make myself separate from them. There's me over here fighting against thoughts over there. But when I practice being like the stream, there's no separation. The thoughts and the awareness are all part of one flowing process." Master Streamflow nodded with deep approval. "Now you are touching the heart of the teaching. When you truly embody the stream consciousness, you realize that thoughts are not foreign invaders, but natural expressions of awareness itself. Fighting them is like the river trying to fight against its own flow. As evening approached and the time came for the community's final meditation of the day, Sister Grasping returned to her cushion with an entirely transformed relationship to her practice. Instead of sitting down with the familiar dread of upcoming mental struggle, she settled into meditation with the gentle anticipation of spending time beside a peaceful stream. When thoughts arose during the evening sit, and they did continue to arise just as leaves continue to fall into rivers, she met them with the stream's wisdom. Each mental movement was welcomed as a natural part of the flowing process, acknowledged without resistance, and allowed to pass through her awareness at its own pace. Some thoughts moved quickly through her consciousness like leaves carried by swift currents. Others lingered for a while, like debris caught temporarily on underwater branches. But all of them were met with the same spacious acceptance, the same trust in the natural intelligence of awareness itself. That night, as Sister Grasping prepared for sleep, she applied the floating leaf teaching to the transition from waking consciousness to dreams. Instead of struggling to make her mind blank or fighting against the day's mental residue, she allowed all thoughts and images to flow through her awareness like leaves floating downstream towards the ocean of sleep. Memories of the day's activities arose and gently dissolved. Plans for tomorrow surfaced and naturally faded. Even deeper concerns about her spiritual development appeared in her consciousness, but now she met them with the stream's wisdom, acknowledging their presence without grasping or resistance, trusting in the natural process that carries all mental activity toward rest. As she drifted into sleep, Sister Grasping felt herself becoming one with the flowing stream of consciousness itself. Her dreams were peaceful rivers carrying beautiful visions downstream, and her rest was as deep and natural as water returning to the sea. She had learned the secret that transformed struggle into surrender, that the mind's natural state is like a clear stream, and our thoughts are simply leaves floating through the ever-flowing waters of awareness. The floating leaf had taught her that true peace comes not from controlling the river of consciousness, but from learning to be the river itself, spacious, accepting, and eternally flowing toward the ocean of perfect rest. Story 8. The Sleeping Cat. In the ancient temple of eternal rest, nestled among rolling hills where lavender fields stretched toward distant mountains, there lived a most unusual teacher. This teacher held no formal title, gave no lectures, and possessed no extensive library of sacred texts. Yet pilgrims traveled from distant lands seeking wisdom from this master, whose teachings were conveyed entirely through the art of perfect rest. The teacher was a temple cat named Serenity, a graceful feline with fur the color of moonlight and eyes like pools of liquid amber. Serenity had been born in the temple gardens and had never known a day of worry or struggle in her entire life. She moved through the world with a natural confidence that seemed to emanate from some deep, unshakable trust in the fundamental goodness of existence. What made Serenity extraordinary was not her appearance or even her remarkably peaceful disposition, but her absolute mastery of the art of sleep. This cat could fall asleep anywhere, anytime, under any circumstances, with a completeness of surrender that left observers speechless with wonder. Whether resting in a patch of warm sunlight, curled up on a meditation cushion, or even dozed in the midst of temple construction work, Serenity embodied a quality of trust and relaxation that seemed to touch something divine. The head monk of the temple was Master Awareness, an elderly sage whose own journey to enlightenment had been marked by decades of struggle with anxiety, insomnia, and the persistent fear that the universe was fundamentally unsafe. Despite years of meditation practice, study of sacred texts, and guidance from renowned teachers, Master Awareness still found himself lying awake at night, his mind churning, with worries about the temple's future, concerns about his students' progress, and deeper existential fears about the nature of life and death. One particularly difficult evening, after a day filled with administrative challenges and a night of restless tossing and turning, Master Awareness found himself walking through the temple gardens in the early hours before dawn. His mind was exhausted, but relentlessly active, spinning through scenarios of potential problems and imagined catastrophes that might befall the temple community. As he made his way along the moonlit paths between the herb gardens and reflecting pools, Master Awareness discovered Serenity sleeping peacefully in the most unexpected place, directly in the center of the main walkway, where dozens of monks would soon be passing on their way to morning meditation. The cat lay completely exposed and vulnerable, yet utterly relaxed, her breathing deep and rhythmic, her body curled in perfect contentment. Master Awareness paused, struck by something profound in this simple scene. Here was a small creature who possessed nothing. No savings account, no insurance policies, no security guards, no locked doors. Serenity owned no property, controlled no resources, and had no guarantees about where her next meal would come from or whether tomorrow would bring safety or danger. Yet she slept with a depth of peace that the Master, despite all his spiritual training and material security, had never experienced. Intrigued by this observation, Master Awareness began to study the temple cat more carefully over the following days. What he discovered challenged everything he thought he understood about the relationship between security and peace. Serenity slept in the garden during thunderstorms, completely undisturbed by the lightning and rain. She napped peacefully on the temple steps while construction workers repaired the roof with loud hammering and shouting. She dozed contentedly in the kitchen while pots and pans clattered around her. Most remarkably, she could fall asleep within moments of settling down, regardless of noise, weather, or activity happening nearby. But it wasn't just Serenity's ability to sleep that fascinated Master Awareness. It was the quality of trust that surrounded her like an invisible aura. The cat moved through life with absolute confidence that she belonged exactly where she was, that her needs would be met, and that the universe would provide whatever was necessary for her well-being. She never hoarded food, never built elaborate shelters, never spent time worrying about future security. She simply trusted completely in each present moment. One afternoon, as Master Awareness sat in the garden observing Serenity's afternoon nap, he decided to conduct an experiment. He began listing aloud all the reasons why the cat should be worried. "Serenity, don't you realize that winter is coming? Don't you know that the temple's finances are uncertain? Aren't you concerned that someone might accidentally step on you sleeping in the walkway? Don't you worry about illness or natural disasters, or whether the monks will always be here to care for you?" Serenity opened one amber eye, regarded the Master with a look of benign puzzlement, stretched luxuriously, and promptly went back to sleep. Her response was so immediate and complete that Master Awareness couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of trying to teach anxiety to a being who lived in perfect harmony with the present moment. "You don't understand worry at all, do you?" he said softly to the sleeping cat. "You've never learned to fear the future or regret the past. You simply trust that this moment, whatever it contains, is exactly what it should be." As if responding to his words, Serenity began to purr in her sleep, a sound so deep and contentment-filled that it seemed to vibrate through the garden itself. The purring created a field of tranquility that Master Awareness could actually feel in his own body, as if the cat's peace was contagious. Over the following weeks, Master Awareness made Serenity's sleep practice his primary spiritual study. He would sit quietly nearby as the cat settled down for her numerous daily naps, observing exactly how she transitioned from waking consciousness to deep rest. What he discovered was revolutionary. Serenity never fought against sleepiness when it arose. The moment she felt tired, she would find a comfortable spot and immediately surrender to rest without any mental negotiations about whether this was the right time or place to sleep. She never lay down and then spent time worrying about the day's events or planning tomorrow's activities. Her transition from movement to stillness was instantaneous and complete. Most remarkably, Serenity seemed to trust absolutely in the process of sleep itself. She never appeared anxious about losing consciousness, never worried about being vulnerable while resting, never questioned whether she would wake up safely. She simply surrendered completely to the natural rhythm of rest and activity, trusting in something larger than her individual will to take care of her while she slept. She sleeps like someone who knows she's loved by the universe. Master Awareness realized one evening as he watched Serenity curl up on his own meditation cushion. She rests with the confidence of a child sleeping in her mother's arms. This insight triggered a profound shift in the Master's understanding. All his life he had approached sleep as something to be achieved through effort. The right environment, the perfect schedule, the correct techniques for quieting his mind. But Serenity revealed sleep as an act of surrender, a practice of trust, a willingness to let go of control and allow the natural wisdom of the body to take over. Inspired by the cat's teaching, Master Awareness began to experiment with this approach to rest. Instead of lying in bed, wrestling with his thoughts, trying to force his mind into stillness, he practiced what he came to call cat consciousness, the complete surrender to the present moment that characterized all of Serenity's behavior. When bedtime arrived, instead of mentally reviewing the day's problems or anticipating tomorrow's challenges, Master Awareness would imagine himself as Serenity, a being so completely trusted by the universe that sleep was as natural and effortless as breathing. He would visualize himself curled up in the cosmic lap of existence itself, held and protected by forces of love and wisdom far greater than his individual concerns. When worries arose about the temple's future or his responsibilities as a teacher, he would ask himself, what would Serenity do with this concern? The answer was always the same. She would acknowledge it briefly, perhaps, with the equivalent of opening one eye, and then return immediately to the perfect peace of the present moment. The transformation in Master Awareness's sleep was remarkable and swift. Within days of beginning this practice, he found himself falling asleep as easily as the temple cat, sinking into rest with a quality of surrender he had never experienced before. His dreams became peaceful and restorative, and he woke each morning refreshed and naturally alert without the aid of artificial stimulation or the weight of accumulated sleep debt. But the cat's teaching extended beyond mere sleep technique into a fundamental shift in his relationship with existence itself. Serenity had shown him that true security comes not from controlling circumstances, but from trusting in the basic goodness and intelligence of life. Peace arises not from having all the answers, but from resting in the confidence that we are held and cared for by something infinitely wise and loving. As word of Master Awareness's transformation spread through the spiritual community, other teachers and students began to visit the Temple of Eternal Rest, hoping to learn from the sleeping cat. Serenity, completely unbothered by her growing reputation, continued her daily practice of perfect rest, unconsciously teaching the most profound spiritual lesson of all, that the universe is fundamentally trustworthy, and that we can safely let go of our vigilant control and surrender to the natural rhythms of existence. One evening, as Master Awareness prepared for sleep in his simple quarters, he found Serenity curled up at the foot of his sleeping mat, purring softly in the gathering darkness. The cat's presence filled the room with an almost tangible sense of peace and protection. "Thank you, little teacher," he whispered to his feline companion. "You've shown me that sleep is not something we do, but something we allow. Rest is not an achievement, but a surrender. And trust is not a belief, but a way of being." As if understanding his gratitude, Serenity's purring deepened, creating a sound like distant ocean waves or wind through ancient trees. The vibrations seemed to resonate through Master Awareness's entire being, dissolving the last traces of tension or concern. "Tonight," he said to himself, settling into the peaceful rhythm of the cat's breathing, "I sleep as Serenity sleeps, with complete trust in the love that holds all things, with absolute confidence in the wisdom that guides all rest, with perfect surrender to the peace that is always available when we stop struggling against the natural flow of life." Within moments, both teacher and student had drifted into the deepest, most restorative sleep, their breathing synchronized like two instruments, playing the same eternal song of trust and surrender. In the morning, they would wake naturally refreshed and ready for another day of teaching the world that true peace comes not from controlling life, but from learning to rest completely in the infinite love that holds all beings in perfect safety. The sleeping cat had revealed the ultimate secret, that when we truly trust in the fundamental benevolence of existence, sleep becomes as natural as breathing, and rest becomes a homecoming to the peace that has always been our deepest nature.